जी, जी।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا زدنا علما. اللهم فكهنا في الدين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As our topic today is the last of the sifat among the opposites. So far we covered in previous classes the sifat of the running of sound, the running of air, the raising of the tongue, the elevation of the tongue. And now we're going to cover, inshallah, the sifat based on the rules of whether there is ease in the pronunciation of letters. Okay, whether there is ease in the pronunciation of letters. So this sifat is called the sifat of idhlaq and ismat. Okay, is idhlaq and ismat. These two characteristics that we are going to talk about today have nothing to do with tajweed. It's just a part of the Arabic grammar. It's part of Arabic language. Okay, and these two characteristics, basically, it's the ease with which you pronounce these letters based on its makhraj, right? The makhraj of the letter, and the fluency with which you can get the sound out without any difficulty. That's what this sifat is about. Let's look at the definition that they give here. These two characteristics have more to do with the Arabic language than anything else, and are only included here because they are found in Tajweed books of Imam al-Jazari. Because Imam al-Jazari included them in his books, they are mentioned here. Though they are not they are not sifat per se. They are got to do more with the rules, the grammar rules, the language rules. That's what they have. They have got to do with it. So, what is idlaq? Idlaq is defined as fluency. It's more like fluency in pronunciation of these letters. And if you look at these letters, farra min lub, as it's written over here, farra min lub, you will notice that all these letters of farra min lub are either emitted from the tip of the tongue or they are emitted from the lips. If you notice, if you remember the makhraj of all these letters, if you see all these letters, none of them come from the deep part of the mouth. All of them come from the tip of the tongue or the lips. Remember the exit point of the sound. Where does your sound exit from? From the mouth, right? From your mouth. It comes out into the environment that's the exit point where it goes out into the environment. From inside, it comes out and it goes out into the environment. So these letters, farra min lub, are letters where the makhraj of all these letters are from the lips or from the tip of the tongue. So there is ease in pronouncing these letters. There's not much effort at all compared to letters that are deep down, like the hamza, like the ain, right, like the ha. So there's more hardship when you pronounce these. You have to be very careful about the specific articulation points of these letters. But the letters of far min lub are ease in pronunciation. The opposite of it is ismat, and here there is refusal. The meaning of ismat is refusal. And the letters are more harder to pronounce, more effort, and they are considered heavier on the tongue. Okay, and they do not rely on the tip of the tongue. They do not rely on the tip of the tongue. Okay, that's why they are called the letters of ismat, because there is some refusal of the sound to come out. There's a lot of effort that happens when you try to get the sound out. If you notice, even the letter thaw is not included among the letters of idhlaq. Though tha is a letter where the tip of the tongue is touching is very close to the tip of the tongue letter, but it is not included in this in the category of idhlaq, because even tha has some resistance. There's some hardship in getting the sound out. So as I said, this rule is basically to do with the language, the Arabic language as a whole, and it's been included in the books by Imam Jazari, and that's the reason why this has been mentioned here. Okay, so now we'll have a quick look at what we covered so far. We covered the characteristics that have opposites. We talked about there are 5 different characteristics, and we divided them based on the sound, whether the sound is being stopped or whether it's flowing. That was one way we divided the letters into groups. Another way we divided the letters into the groups, into the sifat, are based on whether there is air in the sound. While the sound is running, is there air too running in the letter, or whether there is no air. Okay, so that was another group. And then we divided the groups again based on the elevation of the tongue, right? And another way we divided is based on how high the tongue is in its position, okay? And whether it closes off the oral cavity. So let's look at again hams and jahar. That's got to do with the running of air. Hams, here there is running of air in hams letters. فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ. While in jahar, there is no running of air. In the letters of shidda, there is imprisonment of sound. Again, in the letters of shidda, tawassut, and rakhawa, we are looking at whether sound is running or imprisoned. So if you look at the letters of shidda, you'll see the letters of shidda, the sound is imprisoned. Okay, the sound is imprisoned. In the letters of rakhawa, which is the opposite of shidda, the sound is running. And in between are the letters of tawassut, where there is partial running of sound and partial imprisonment. Okay, we have done this before, so I'm not going to delve into it in detail, but just keep in mind the second category is based on whether the sound is imprisoned or whether it is running. The third way we divided the letters was based on the elevation of the tongue. So there are two categories here, isti'ala and istifal. Isti'ala has to do with the elevation of the tongue, and istifal has to do with the lowering of the tongue. When I say isti'ala, elevation, I mean the back part of the tongue, the posterior part of the tongue. If the posterior part of the tongue is elevated towards the roof of the mouth, then the sound comes heavy, and that's the reason why you call it isti'ala. And istifal, the back part of the tongue, the posterior part of the tongue is lowered, okay, and the sound is thin. It's not full mouth, it's a thin sound. The next way we divided the letters was based on how high the tongue is raised up, based on whether the sound is compressed, because the space between the surface of the tongue and the roof of the mouth has become very less, okay, has compressed, has become less. So the letters of idhlaq have to do with the narrowing of the space between the surface of the tongue and the roof of the mouth, leading to the compression of the sound. So that's called idhlaq. Adhering here means, when they say adhering means the tongue has been raised up so high towards the roof of the mouth that it feels like it's actually going to go stick to the roof of the mouth. Okay, it feels like the tongue is going to stick to the roof of the mouth. That's why it's called adhering. Adhering means to stick. Infitah, which is the opposite of idhlaq, means the separation. That is, the tongue has separated from the roof of the mouth and come down. Okay, So the opposite of idbar is infita, which is separation. And that when you bring the tongue down, you're actually opening up the oral cavity. Okay, the space between the roof of the mouth and the surface of the tongue has now opened up. It's opened. As I said, infita means to open, right? Here it means separation here because the tongue has separated and has fallen away from the roof of the mouth. The last we did was that is what we did today was the fluency and the hardship in the pronunciation of these letters. The refusal, the desisting, the refusal in the pronouncing of the letters of idlaq and ismat. I'm sorry, idlaq and ismat. So idlaq is fluency and ismat is refusal. Okay, we will start with our next group today. And these are the characteristics of letters that do not have opposites. So far, we talked about all the letters that had opposites. And now we are going to talk about letters that have certain specific exclusive traits that no one else has in the letters. Okay, it's just like in a class of students, there are some students have these exclusive traits that not everyone has. Okay, similar to that, we will look at the letters, the Arabic huruf, and we'll see which letters have these exclusive traits. The first one is the sifat of safir. Okay, and safir means sharpness of sound. Sharpness in the sound of the letter pronounced from its, and the reason why it's sharp is because it is going through a tight passage. The sound is traveling through a tight passage, and that's the reason why there is sharpness in the sound. The letters of Safir are the letters Sod, Sin, and Za. If you remember the character, the makhraj of these letters, it will make more sense to you. Because if you remember, the makhraj of Sod is the tip of the tongue touching the plates of the lower incisors, and the tongue, the sound, and the tip of the tongue, there is a gap between the tip of the tongue and the plates of the lower incisors. Okay, the sound is traveling through between the teeth and it comes out. So the passage is very small there. In Seen, again, if you remember, all these three letters, the same makhraj, right? Sod, Seen, and Za. They all have the same makhraj. So again, Seen too, the tip of the tongue is close to the base of the plates of the lower incisors, and same with Za, and they are not touching. They are not touching the plates. There's a gap between the tip of the tongue and the plates, and the sound traverses through the teeth, between the teeth, the upper and lower teeth, and the sound comes out through a very thin passage. So there is sharpness in the sound. Now, if you look at the letter of Sod, and if you work on the makhraj of Sod, you will realize that in As, you will notice that there is the sound of a whistle in the sound, right? Like the hustling of the wind, the whistle of the wind. That's the sound of As. If you look at the letter Seen, the sound of Seen is the sound of like the hissing sound, right? The hissing sound. As, the sound of hiss in the sound of Seen. In the sound of Za, you'll notice there's a buzzing sound, the buzzing of the bees. Okay, now let's look at what they have mentioned here. This sound is not a forced sound, but one that should come out naturally with the letters. So when you make this sound exaggerated, you say ash. That's wrong. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Tafashi, sorry. If you say us, you're making the sound too exaggerated. If you say the sound us, you're putting too much pressure on that opening there. So it should not be a forced sound. Okay, the sound is not a forced sound, but one that should come out with ease, naturally with the letters. Okay, some may have difficulty pronouncing this characteristic if they have a large overbite of the teeth. It is if their upper tooth is way further than the lower teeth, lower incisors, then it's going to be hard to pronounce these letters. This can be overcome if the lower jaw is also protruded so that the upper and lower jaw align. Another reason for the incorrect muting of this characteristic is if the tip of the tongue is pressed with force on the plates of the teeth. So you cannot touch the tip of the tongue to the lower teeth. You have to keep it close to it. If you remember the makhraj, the tip of the tongue is not touching the lower plates of the lower teeth. It's very, very close to the plates of the lower teeth, but it doesn't touch it. If you make contact and put pressure on that area, the sound will not come out right because there is a space between the tip of the tongue and the plates. This is the reason why there is a whistle, there is a buzz, there is a hiss in the sound. Okay? Okay, we will stop with that. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.